The Silent Monk's Gift. In a small, tranquil village nestled between the mountains and the river, the people were known for their busy, often restless lives. They worked hard from dawn until dusk, their minds filled with worries about the future, their hearts burdened by past regrets. The villagers, although polite to one another, had little peace in their hearts. They often argued, complained, and struggled with stress and fear. One day, a humble monk arrived in the village. He was dressed in simple robes, carrying nothing more than a walking staff and a small bowl for food. His name was Viro, and he had taken a vow of silence. He had spent years meditating in the forests and mountains, practicing mindfulness and compassion. Now, his journey had led him to this village, where he hoped to offer something of great value to the troubled people. When Viro entered the villagers took little notice of him. He did not speak to anyone, nor did he seek out any particular person. Instead, he simply walked through the village with a peaceful demeanor, quietly observing the daily lives of the people. His calm presence seemed to ripple through the air, like the stillness of a deep lake. For several days, Viro walked the village streets, sat in the town square, and visited the small temple at the edge of the village. He did not utter a word, nor did he perform any grand gestures. Instead, he lived simply, moving with grace and serenity. His silence was not a withdrawal from the world, but a deep connection to it. The villagers began to notice something strange happening around him. At first, the people were curious. Some wondered why this monk refused to speak, but many were intrigued by the calmness that seemed to follow him. One afternoon, as Viro sat quietly under a tree near the marketplace, a young woman named Lila approached him. She was a seamstress, known for her quick temper and impatient nature. Lila had always felt a sense of dissatisfaction with her life. She was constantly rushing, trying to finish her work, worrying about the future, and feeling overwhelmed by the demands of her craft. That day, she was frustrated with a difficult piece of cloth she was trying to sew, and she was on the verge of tears. She had no idea why she was drawn to the silent monk, but something within her urged her to sit beside him. Without saying a word, Viro smiled gently and motioned for Lila to sit down beside him. She hesitated but then complied. For a long while, they simply sat together in silence, as the world moved around them. Slowly, Lila began to feel a sense of peace that she had not experienced in years. The tension in her shoulders began to ease, and the storm in her mind began to quiet. As she sat there, she noticed something about Viro. There was no rush in his movements, no anxiety in his gaze. He was fully present in the moment, and that presence seemed to calm everything around him. For the first time, Lila felt the weight of her worries lift. She closed her eyes and took a deep breath. The monk's silence spoke louder than any words could have. It was a silence that invited stillness, a silence that allowed her to connect with her own inner peace. When Lila stood up to leave, she felt lighter, as though a burden had been removed from her shoulders. She thanked the monk with a silent bow and went back to her work with a newfound calm. Over the next few days, more and more villagers found themselves drawn to Viro. They came to sit with him in silence, not expecting advice or words of wisdom, but simply seeking his peaceful presence. The village, once filled with noise and agitation, began to quiet. People began to slow down, to breathe deeper, and to feel a sense of connection to one another. One day, the village blacksmith, who was known for his temper, had a confrontation with a young apprentice. The argument grew heated, and the blacksmith raised his voice, ready to scold the boy. But then, he looked up and saw Viro sitting quietly by the riverbank, watching the scene with a serene expression. For reasons he couldn't explain, the blacksmith felt his anger fade. He lowered his voice and took a deep breath, calming himself. The next morning, as the villagers gathered in the town square, they noticed something different. The atmosphere was lighter, more harmonious. People were greeting each other with warm smiles instead of curt nods. Conversations were softer, filled with understanding rather than impatience. The whole town seemed to be living in a quieter rhythm. Days turned into weeks, and the village transformed. The people, inspired by the monk's silent example, began to practice mindfulness in their own lives. They took time to pause, to breathe, and to simply be present. They noticed the beauty of the sunrise, the warmth of the sun on their skin, and the joy of being together. The arguments that once filled the village seemed to diminish, and in their place grew a sense of community, peace, and compassion. One evening, as the sun set behind the mountains, the village gathered in the town square to thank Viro for his gift. The elder of the village stood and spoke on behalf of the people. "Monk Viro," he said, "you have not given us riches or teachings, yet you have given us the greatest gift of all, the gift of silence, of presence. You have shown us that peace does not come from words or wealth, but from simply being still and kind. We are forever grateful." Viro, as always, remained silent. But his eyes sparkled with a quiet understanding. His work was done. The next morning, when the villagers woke up, they found that the monk had quietly left during the night, leaving no trace of his presence except for the lasting peace he had left behind. His teachings had not been through words, but through the simple, profound power of his silence and his ability to be present with others in their moment of need. From that day on, the village flourished not with grand gestures or speeches, but with small acts of kindness, understanding, and silence. The people, who had once been consumed by the noise of their lives, had found the most valuable lesson of all, that the silence of the heart can speak louder than any words ever could. Moral of the story: sometimes, the most powerful gift we can give to others is not our words, but our presence. The silent monk's gift teaches us that true peace and transformation come from being present in the moment, from offering kindness without the need for speech, and from allowing the stillness within us to touch the hearts of others. In a world that is often loud and chaotic, silence can be the most profound and healing form of communication. Thanks for watching. If you found this video insightful, don't forget to give it a like, share it with others who might benefit, and subscribe to the channel for more valuable content like this. Hit the bell icon so you never miss an update. See you in the next video.